What's up guys, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm talking about some must-read manga and manhwa. Well, in reality, these are just some of my favorite that I want more people to read. So enjoy and consider subscribing and joining the Discord. Let's go. So first up, and probably my favorite manga at this point, and the series I talk about mostly on this channel, Kanganathra, and the sequel manga to it, Kangen Omega. So this series is fantastic. If you're watching this video, most likely already read or are planning to read Kanganathra, because most of my channel is covering stuff regarding this. But for some reason, if you haven't, this is why you should check it out. The fights in this series are some of the best and most realistic fights I've ever read in fiction. It's a lot more grounded, while saying that there is some supernatural aspects, such as some transformations some characters have, and then some unrealistic abilities that some have throughout the story. But for the most part, it's grounded and has a realistic base, more closer than many other manga I've read and we'll talk about in today's video. The art about the halfway point through Ashura and throughout all of Omega is absolutely godly. Some of the best I've seen as a whole is absolutely godly. The early parts of Ashura does have pretty decent art, but nowhere near the crazy absurd level it reaches halfway through Ashura and now in Omega, with it just getting better and better and more insane and more godly as the chapters go on. There's so many Chad characters throughout the whole story, which all of them get their own time to shine, their own backstory, their own motivation, their own, development, all very cool regarding that. There isn't a clear protagonist, which allows a large variety of characters to get this shine and to have their own, pretty much story arcs throughout the main appeal of the story. In Kanganathra, the main story is a massive tournament arc. So if you're a shonen fan, even though this is a seinen manga, if you're a shonen fan and enjoy tournament arcs, this tournament arc known as the Annihilation Tournament is some of the best I've seen in anime and manga of all time. It's absolutely fantastic. The fights are fast-paced and intense with a sprinkle of, development, backstory. The author likes to, implement the backstories during the fight or as the fight goes on. So the fight will start, there may be a back and forth between the two characters, then throughout the chapters we may get little glimpses of each of the characters' backstory. This is when we're first introduced to them. And another drawing point I really enjoy about Kangen is the twist. When I started with watching the anime before I got into the manga for it, but just the twist and the unpredictability of how a lot of the fights go. Some you can kind of predict based on who the main characters are, but others you have no idea what's going to happen and you just get absolutely bamboozled, and the person you think was going to stomp gets absolutely stomped instead. So that's just greatness for Kangen that is a must read and probably my number one manga at this point. Next up we have Berserk. The story or manga is known as having above god tier art, and I can confirm this statement. The character development throughout the story is absolutely insane and top tier, with the main characters having insanely good writing, with not very other stories I've read even comparing. There's medieval gore and horror throughout, with our boy Guts, the protagonist, being unmatched in this role compared to anything else I've read. There's some main characters that come close, but still Guts is, the supreme protagonist of all time, and that will never change, most likely for me. It's considered the highest rated, if not one of the highest rated manga of all time, and this is for a reason, because it's fucking good. And if you haven't read Berserk, I don't know what you're doing. Don't watch the anime. You can watch some of the animes. The older 1980 whatever one it is pretty decent, but honestly just read the manga and you'll enjoy absolute greatness story, and just read it, mate. Vinland Saga has super Chad art with super Chad Viking mixed with heart-wrenching twist, and a story of growth is just the tip of why Vinland Saga is a must-read. The anime that covers the first main arc throughout the manga is good. It was adapted very well, but still the later parts are even better than that. Hopefully we get a season 2 for the anime soon, but if you want to get into it, I recommend watching the first season and then maybe seeing what chapter season 1 ends off and then reading from there. That's what I personally did, and I enjoyed it immensely. The adaptation for the anime, from what I know of, was done quite well. They did change a few things around and the order how the story was presented, but for the most part, you still got the same greatness delivered. Now I'm going to talk about a must-read manhwa. I've talked about it in a few of my videos now. It goes by the name of The Boxer. As the title mentions, its focus is related to boxing, with 3 main characters, or 3 protagonists you could say, being the focus of the story so far. There's around 40 or so chapters for the Raws and about 20 or so that have been translated to English. I recommend reading about the first 6 chapters. I don't really want to spoil much of it because there's a big change up in the early parts, and I highly recommend, if you're a boxing fan or enjoy boxing anime or manga, make sure to check out The Boxer. And if you haven't really checked out any manhwa, I actually do recommend starting with The Boxer, seeing if you like that type of stuff alongside manga as well. So yep, check out The Boxer. Going over to another must-read manga, we have Shimatsu no Valkyrie, or known as Record of Ragnarok, another story that I like talking about on this channel. Another great fighting manga as well. Its main emphasis is the battle of humans versus gods in like a big tournament. So it'll be one-on-one battles in the tournament of a human from history or from fiction. So for example, the first or a couple fights that have happened, or one of the early fights, is Adam from, the Bible and all that related to that against Zeus. That was one of the fights, with Adam being a representative of humanity and then Zeus being a representative of God. That was one of the fights. If you're a fan of the Fate series in any way, like I am, I can highly recommend this and would say most Fate fans will immensely enjoy this series. And if you're even a Kanganathra or any other fighting manga or anime, if you enjoy that with the extreme like superpower level gods fighting to the death in one-on-one battles, absolutely insane, crazy art as well. The art in this is absolutely top tier from the start to the current chapter. Current chapter's in like 36, I believe, is the most recent chapter that came out. But a major warning about this, there is backstory for characters, there is some development, but not really. It's more about, the crazy fight and the, struggle for humanity to survive. So that's a Record of Ragnarok. The next story I'm going to talk about is also a manhwa, and that is The God of High School. Many of you may know of the anime that's currently airing. The anime adaptation, from what I've seen, the first 7 or 8 episodes isn't good. They've skipped a lot of stuff, and if you haven't read the manhwa like I have, it most likely will be very confusing and you may not even know what's going on for many parts throughout the story, just how much they're jumping around, they're changing stuff around and not really explaining anything. They're trying to get up to like manhwa chapter 100, with manhwa chapters being a lot longer than manga chapters, but they're trying to get up to chapter 100 with like the first 13 episodes, to show all that whole major first, arc or story issue. But the manhwa doesn't have this issue. Each character gets their own shine, their own, development, their own backstory, their own, reason for entering the tournament. As always, tournament fighting, but doesn't just focus on the big tournament fights. There is an underlying, plot or underlying story that takes the forefront later on in the story and, develops into other stuff. It's just, hidden behind the tournament aesthetic at the early parts, and it gets better and better. Later parts does, drive into, the battle of the gods, Dragon Ball-esque destroying and battles and, destroying universes and shit regarding that, which in my opinion is the biggest appeal and most interesting thing and most enjoyable thing coming from The God of High School. You may enjoy the character's development and the overall story, but in my opinion the story isn't that strong. And if you're a Dragon Ball fan, you're probably gonna like The God of High School, especially the later on parts. And then the last manga I'm going to talk about in today's video is the Bucky or Baki series. So I really enjoy this. Another series I tend to talk a lot about on this channel. It has become one of my favorite now. I do prefer Record of Ragnarok, Kanganathra, Berserk and Vinland Saga over Baki at this point, but Baki is still very good, and the main appeal of it, as always for most of the things I talked about in today's video, is the fights. The story for Bucky as a whole isn't the best, but the fights are the main drawing point and why it has 6 or 7 different manga and is still ongoing to this day for over 30 years of, you know, running with chapters coming out on the regular. This insane fights, the insanity of some of the fights is crazy. There is training modes which are very, you know, hype pumping and this very interesting to watch. And, you know, the characters fighting, the gore, the insanity, the insanity, pure insanity of Bucky is why you want to read Bucky. And for some reason, I'm getting, you know, a lot of comedy vibes from it with how serious some of the characters are with the, you know, insane moves, insane training they're doing, which gives me, you know, a funny comedy kick out of it. That's everything for today's video. Hope you decide to read some of the ones I mentioned in today's video. If you have not already, make sure to subscribe, join the Discord, leave a like, and that's it guys. Peace.